Hey there, this is Todd with Industrial Comfort. Today I'm going to show you how to build a cassette removal tool just like this one. And no, I didn't forget to add the bottle opener, because who doesn't love drinking a cold beer while doing some bike maintenance? Now the problem that we're solving for is that as bikes evolve, they're packing more cogs into these cassettes. The higher the cog count, the narrower the spacing is going to be between the cogs and the cassette. So an older tool like this with a wider chain will not work properly on a newer cassette. And you want to be really careful because this will damage the cassette. And at $300 to $400 a pop, that's going to be an expensive mistake. That's why I'm going to show you how to build this new cassette removal tool with a chain that's appropriately sized for your cassette. Not to mention it's just cool to have a home-built tool. So why don't we head down to the shop and I'll show you how to make this. I start the project by digging up an extra 12-speed chain that I have and a 3/32 by 1.5 inch piece of flat stock steel I have laying around the shop. I then measure out 10.5 inches on the steel stock. Then I cut down to size on the bandsaw. It's time to prep the chain components of this tool, and to do so, I'm going to start by backing out the pin on one of the outer links of this chain. But I'm going to be careful not to back the pin out all the way, because I'm going to reuse that pin later when I secure the different components of this chain back to the handle to create the tool. As you can see, I've left the pin in place while removing the intersection of the link. I then count down 7 outer links and remove the end pin. We don't need to save this pin because we're not going to reuse it, because we're only going to attach one end of this portion of the chain to the chain whip handle. I next repeat the process of backing out the pin from one of the outer links while leaving it in place. I'll then count 3 outer links and do the same thing with the pin on that end, leaving it in place so that we can reuse it when we attach it to the handle of the tool. It's time to mark the location of the holes that we're going to drill in order to attach the chain to the steel handle. So I measure a 1/4 inch in from the side and a 1/4 inch down from the top, and then I'll draw corresponding lines. The location of the first hole will be the intersection of these 2 lines in the corner, which is a 1/4 inch down and a 1/4 inch over. The second hole will also be a 1/4 inch down and 2 1/8 inches to the left of the first hole in the corner. The third hole will also be a 1/4 inch down and will be a 1/2 inch from the second hole that we marked. I bring the flat stock over to the drill press and use a 5/32 drill bit to drill the holes. Now for the bottle opener, I use a 5/16 inch drill bit and drill a hole 1 inch in and a 1/2 inch up from the ends. I draw a line at roughly 45 degrees from each end of the hole that I just drilled on the drill press. This will serve as the opening for the bottle opener, which I'll cut out on the bandsaw in a little bit. I bring the handle over to the belt grinder just to round off the square corners. I'm making a slight depression in the handle of the tool. This is where the cassette is going to rest, so it'll provide for slightly better purchase when the cassette makes contact. I'm notching a line down the center of the handle, which I'll use as a reference point for the 2 pins that will hold the handle in place, in addition to a third hole that will serve as the hole for the lanyard to hang the tool. The hole I chose for the lanyard is a 1/2 inch up from the bottom of the handle, and then the first pin will be 1 inch from the 1/2 inch mark, and then the third hole for the second pin will be another 3 inches up from that second hole. But the placement of the pin in the lanyard hole is entirely personal preference. I use a 3/16 inch bit for the 2 pin holes, and then for the lanyard hole I'll use a 1/4 inch bit. I'm back to the bandsaw where I'm just cutting out the notch for the bottle opener that I drilled earlier. And now a little bit of file work to just smooth out the edges on the bottle opener. For the handle, I'm going to use some padauk that I had laying around the shop, and I'm going to cut it to a size that's a little bit larger than the handle as it exists now. I stacked the 2 pieces of padauk I just cut and used the steel handle as a template to drill the pinholes and the lanyard hole. After drilling each hole, I'll insert either a pin or an extra drill bit to stabilize the wood to make sure it doesn't move as I'm drilling the next hole. The handle is finally completed with all contouring and holes, so I pin it to a 2x4 that I have locked in my vise. I'm then going to apply some lubricant, in this case some WD-40, and I'm going to sand what's eventually going to be the exposed portion of the chain whip. I'll start sanding with 150 grit sandpaper and move my way up to 600 grit. The higher the grit, the shinier the polish will be. I take a 3/16 inch steel rod that I have and cut 2 small segments that are going to serve as the handle pins. Before epoxying the wood handle to the tool, I connect the 2 pieces of wood using the 2 pins that I just cut, and I'm going to contour the sections of the handle that I'm not going to be able to shape once the wood is connected to the tool. I mix up some 5-minute epoxy and assemble the handle and clamp it together. I also have some acetone on hand to clean up the leading edge of the handle if any epoxy seeps out onto the exposed steel. With the epoxy mixed up, we'll spread it on the wood and assemble the handle. I'm wiping the handle down with some acetone to clean it up. I'm then going to cover it with foil just in case there's any residual epoxy so that it doesn't stick to the clamps. I'm going to leave it clamped for 24 hours. Despite the fact that it's a 5-minute epoxy, I want to give it thorough time to set. Now that the epoxy has had time to cure, I'm going to bring it over to the belt grinder to knock the pins down and then contour the handle and remove any excess wood. A final sand by hand from 220 grit up to 400. I'm then going to take it to the drill press to countersink the holes for the lanyard before applying the final finish of Tru Oil. The final step is to attach the chain components to the handle. And if you remember from an earlier step, I never fully removed the pins from the chain links. This will allow us to easily repress the pins through the link into the handle. To finish the project, I'm going to use a leather shoelace to create a lanyard through the hole in the end of the handle. And now we have a chain whip. I hope you found this video helpful. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks.